It was the first step in a nuclear nightmare. As far as we know at this hour, no worse than that.
On national television, viewers were assured the situation was under control.
Is probably the worst nuclear reactor accident to date. There was no apparent serious contamination of workers. But a nuclear
In Washington, President Jimmy Carter was watching events closely. A trained nuclear engineer, he knew what could happen if there was damage to the core. On Thursday morning, the day after the accident, the chairman of the NRC, Joseph Hendry, was summoned before the House Subcommittee on Energy.
You responded to a question asking how close the water came to the top of the rods with this statement: I don't know how close the water was to the top of the rods. If you don't know, then how can you say whether or not we were close to a core meltdown?
I guess based on just an assortment of aspects of this incident that say we were nowhere near it, in my judgment. Obviously,
within the NRC, no one really thought that you could have a core meltdown. I mean, it was more maybe the Titanic sort of mentality that this plant was so well designed that you couldn't possibly have a serious core damage.
The accident occurred at a time when a growing number of Americans questioned the safety of nuclear power.
There was a perception that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was in bed with plant operators, not just this plant, but all plant operators. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission wasn't a regulatory commission, it was a promotional. It should have been called the Nuclear Promotional Agency.
The economic turmoil of the 1970s had transformed the nuclear industry. Oil shortages had raised prices from $3 a barrel in 1972 to $30 a barrel by 1979. Enticed by the prospect of cheap energy, utility companies ordered scores of nuclear power plants.
We had no control over the number of plants that came in the door. I mean, we were just like your driver's license bureau, and there are people lined up at your desk waiting for an eye exam and a driver's test. And we used to talk about inviting people in off the street to see if they didn't want to come work for the NRC, because we really had more work than we could handle. And we'd review a power plant maybe with 10 to 12 man-years of effort. And you got to remember, it takes thousands of man-years of effort to design a power plant, so we were putting in an extremely small audit.
They scaled this thing up from the 100-megawatt demonstration plants, the sort of laboratory proof of concept nuclear power plants, to these 1,000-megawatt super plants like Zion and Dresden and 3 Mile Island, without anything in between. These monster plants were something that they did not understand clearly.
The valve that failed at 3 Mile Island had malfunctioned 11 times before at other nuclear plants. But neither the designer of the reactor nor the NRC had taken corrective measures or issued a warning.
Now, that warning, if it had gone out to all the rest of the similar nuclear power plants, the accident at 3 Mile Island would never have happened, and that plant would have remained an anonymous sandbar in the middle of the Susquehanna.
A number of people in the mid-70s left the NRC because they felt that safety concerns just weren't being taken seriously. The mindset, to be somewhat simplistic about it, was that everything was safe enough already, that anyone who wanted to raise a new concern, anyone who was skeptical that a particular plant should be licensed, had an immensely heavy burden to demonstrate that it was worth really perturbing the process, because nothing serious had happened yet, or at least nothing serious enough had happened yet.
Throughout Thursday morning, Governor Thornburg felt uneasy. The NRC had assured him that the danger was over, but he wanted a first-hand assessment of conditions at the plant.
It occurred to me, someone's got to go down there and look at that place and see it. And And I being, 30 years old and maybe thinking I was more immortal than I really was, said, I'm going to go down there. 3 Mile Island was in the middle of the Susquehanna River, in the middle of farm country. So it's not like you've got a lot of large buildings around. I mean, you just drive up and there they are. They're magnificently huge, beautifully engineered symbols of the power of technological society to do good and the power of the technological society to do harm. And right now, something's going on in there that you don't understand, and it can be very dangerous.
When he arrived on the island, the lieutenant governor asked to see the source of the radiation releases. Before he entered the highly contaminated area, Scranton was fitted with a protective suit.
It's like getting ready to get into a spacesuit to go on a spacewalk. There were boots that fit over pants, and there was layer upon layer upon layer. It took me 45 minutes to get in all of the suits and putting all the dosimeters on me so that they knew how much radiation I got, and the protective boots and everything. And I remember walking in there, and I must say I was quite unnerved the closer I got to it. When I started walking in, I looked down and I saw on the floor this water, which looked like, water in your basement, except it happened to be in the auxiliary building of a nuclear power plant. I realized that what was around me was highly contaminated. But I came back with a much clearer understanding of what was going on in that island.
For on-site, we were there for about 2.5 hours. When I left the plant, I had been exposed to about 80 millirems. So I feel fine.
The tour left Scranton encouraged. Though there was contaminated water, he told the governor the problem seemed fixable. But in the early morning hours of Friday, it appeared the plant was once again out of control. It was reported that a large burst of radioactive gas had escaped from 3 Mile Island. Within minutes, Thornburg received a startling recommendation from a staff member at the NRC to evacuate the area.
For about 45 minutes in my office, with all of our team assembled, we set about on a crash effort to determine what had prompted this evacuation recommendation out of Washington, D.C. This whole question was constantly recycled. Should we order an evacuation?
Thornburg feared the prospect of a mass exodus. Earlier, he had directed an aide to review the state's emergency plans.
His report to me on the evacuation plans was chilling, to say the least. One of the things I'll never forget was that he said that under the regimen that had been established by the counties on either side of the river, one Dauphin County where Harrisburg was and Cumberland County across the river, that their evacuees would meet head-on in the middle of the bridge over which they were to be evacuated.
The burden of the evacuation decision was on Thornburg's shoulders. Whatever he decided, he knew lives were at stake. The governor was anxious to get advice from the chairman of the NRC, but he got no reply. In Washington, Chairman Hendry was still trying to get a handle on the facts. Frustrated, Hendry told an aide, "Thornburg's information is ambiguous. Mine is non-existent. We're like a couple of blind men trying to make a decision." As the governor waited to hear from Hendry, a siren blared across downtown Harrisburg.
That siren was like a knife in my chest. It was just, I thought, what on earth? Where did that come from?